An SEC showdown in Knoxville, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and you know what? There's more pressure on Oklahoma in this spot.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Coaching carousel madness. We are getting to that later on today's show after we talk about the big game at Old Rocky Top. This episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. Jay Smith of Locked On Sooners is here to talk about the game. According to our friends at FanDuel, Jay, Tennessee favored by 3.5 at home. I think this will be an exciting game. Everybody does. Here's why I think there's more pressure on Oklahoma in this spot. Brent Venables coming into this season did not have the same level of expectations as Tennessee because his are higher. I think the pressure's higher because of the drama, the quarterback change. To me, for where I had these two teams at before the year, I didn't think either was an SEC championship contender, and we have seen that throughout the course of the year. But Josh Heupel was dealing with more. I think there was a house money element, at least for me and how I viewed the Vols head coach coming into the season. Whereas Brent Venables, it's, hey, you got to win or else there's going to be some serious pressure. He's done some winning, but off the loss to Ole Miss last week, you dropped this one as well after losing at home. I don't think that's going to make the fans in Norman very happy.
Not at all, and that's actually completely knocks you out of playoff contention, in which it's still there. Oklahoma just has to pull all the upsets because, honestly, at 9-3, Oklahoma could sneak in there, but they've got to win all of the ranked games going forward. So Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri. Unfortunately, LSU ruined it because that game could have possibly been a playoff in game, but LSU now doesn't have a coach. So things change there. But no, you're right. I believe Oklahoma definitely has most of the pressure in this game because going into this season, the questions around Tennessee was what quarterback, what Joey Aguilar was going to do in this system. I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back here because I said it on our squad show before the season started. Tennessee's offense is going to be better with Joey Aguilar than it was going to be with Nico Iamaleava. Why? Joey has this thing where he will throw the ball. Like he will just launch that thing. And it's kind of like the phenomenon that Lane Kiffin found at Ole Miss, which was a problem for Oklahoma. Trinidad Chambliss came out of nowhere because he's willing to launch that ball. And that's one of the problems Oklahoma's looking at right now is John Mateer won't launch it late in games. At the beginning of the game, seems that he has no fear. But then as the game progresses, it seems like he's second and third guessing himself. And that leads to all the problems that we're dealing with now. So to your point, Oklahoma needs this. We need this to continue the march and potential opportunity to go to the playoffs. If we drop the Alabama game but win Missouri as well as against LSU, there is still a shot that Oklahoma could sneak in at 9-3 because their losses really aren't that bad.
Oklahoma's loss to Texas is...
It's a rivalry game. Everybody throws it out the window.
I know. I know. I'm just saying. I know they're in the AP top 25. They're not in Spencer's poll.
Fair, but as we've talked about this numerous times, rivalries sometimes it makes things squirrely. So you usually get, especially when it's a level of hate that's there when one team is good and the other one's not very good, you see a lot of upsets in it. It's like Bama and Auburn, right? You'll see Auburn knock Bama out of playoff contention or whatnot or title contention. And Auburn's just not that good that season. It happens. It's just the rivalry.
It does, but I don't think that excuses things when it comes to a playoff resume. I don't think that
you might be right.
We'll see it. We'll see if Texas is able to beat Vandy this week. If they really have figured things out,
that will be the determining factor.
Yeah, Oklahoma's rooting for Texas this week. I don't think there's any question about that. And I also agree with the point that you have to have that loss hold up, or it's going to drag your resume down in a big way. I know it stings, but I think you have to at this point in time. But I agree with what you said about whoever loses this game, you're not going to the college football playoff, or at least the chances are very slim. You don't just have to win out with losable games on the schedule remaining, but you'd have to get a lot of help, and I don't think that is guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination here. Let's get to the actual game itself, Jay, and something that is, I'm sure, a talking point in Norman after last week, but the Oklahoma defense has to find a bounce back performance because, boy, that was just not an acceptable showing, especially at home on a day where there was a little bit of weather in Norman as well. For Trinidad Chambliss and the Ole Miss offense to have as much success as they did, that had to be really disappointing if you're Oklahoma. And let me give you a key in this game. My number one key for Oklahoma to get a win: they've got to hold Tennessee's rushing game intact. I know Joey Aguilar has been good, but in Tennessee's 2 losses this year, to Georgia and to Alabama, they have been under 150 yards rushing. And the quarterback gets a lot of attention because they can throw the ball well, and Aguilar's been great. He went for 396 through the air against Kentucky last week. Not that they're very good, but Aguilar has, to your point of what you said before the season, been better than Nico statistically, and I think eye test as well. He'll make a mistake every now and then, but overall, I like where the Tennessee offense is at. I think you have to make him go up and down the field with his arm. If you allow Tennessee to be balanced, I don't think Oklahoma's offense is going to be able to score enough on the road because I don't love what I'm seeing from them on that side of the ball.
Yeah, me either. I don't think anybody is. And it's funny because in this Ole Miss game, this was one of those anomalies. I was talking to Stephen Willis over there at Locked on Ole Miss, and he pointed it out. Ole Miss had a time of possession of 35, and that is not normal for him. They are a tempo offense similar to Tennessee. They're at the bottom of the SEC as far as time of possession, mainly because they're always going tempo. You know what he did in this game against Oklahoma? He didn't run tempo. They huddled. They waited to after 15 seconds before they dispersed, mainly because they leveraged the elements to their advantage. They used the aggression of Oklahoma's defense in this one. Now it looks like this is going to be a perfectly starry night in Knoxville. No rain, no issues. And so the expectation here is that Tennessee's going to go tempo. If they go tempo in this game, that actually plays better for Oklahoma because Brent Venables does a really good job of adjusting the plays as they go out there. And he doesn't really sub a lot if there's tempo unless Tennessee does a sub. Now, we did get kind of bamboozled, hoodwinked, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived by the referees in the game against Ole Miss because we got a couple of penalties on substitutions when Ole Miss made a sub late. The rule is you have to allow the other team to make a substitution. So we did the same, but they did.
Jay, are you telling me that SEC officiating was worthy of criticism over the weekend?
No, not at all. Not at all. Like my rule is you never let the refs dictate your success.
Careful, Jay. You might get fined if you keep speaking like that.
You're right. And
if you point out these true and obvious things, you might get fined, Jay. Be careful, my man.
I think in this game, there will be a situation where the refs will understand that if a tempo team decides to sub and we sub right with them at the same time, 1-for-1, they're going to allow us to take our time to bring a player out, which is what everybody does to slow down tempo. That's why tempo guys typically rarely actually sub. And in this one, which is very fascinating about Tennessee and which I think is going to be interesting in this matchup is Tennessee only plays 3 wide receivers, really. They don't go into the 4 wide and big. They usually bring a wide receiver down into the back position or they have the running back go out. It's not like we've seen with Heupel where he's got 4, sometimes 5 wide receivers spread. They don't do that. Saw Deshaun Bishop in the backfield, 3 wide receivers. And so Oklahoma's going to have to figure out, really Chris Brazzell is going to be the biggest issue, but Staley is fantastic in the slot and Matthews has really evolved into something. So defensively, Oklahoma's going to have to really, like you said, have that bounce back game. And I think if they go tempo, they have a good chance.
I think the defense has to bounce back. John Mateer has to look like his Heisman caliber self that he did earlier this year. And you can throw the ball, we know, on this secondary for the Vols. We've seen that consistently. You can do that too, but that's not exactly where Oklahoma's specialty has been this year. I think Mateer
the last 2 games?
I have a 100-yard rusher against South Carolina, 100-yard and Ole Miss, two games in a row. Whoa!
You know that Tennessee's defense is not any better than those 2, right?
Groundbreaking stuff. I'm just saying, from a passing standpoint, whether Oklahoma can run the ball or not, Mateer can't look the way he has the last couple of games. He's been a little bit too erratic. If it's the injury, if it's not, I'm just going off the results here. It has to be sharper. I don't think Oklahoma's winning this game, Jay. I don't. I like Tennessee at home in this spot. They just have, to me, enough, and I don't trust Even though they came on late last week, I don't trust the Oklahoma offense as much as I trust Tennessee's to be able to execute. I don't think it's as high scoring as last week, but I think Tennessee will win the football game. I think this is 31-23. I like the Vols.
So, no, and I 100% agree with you on that because Tennessee, since 2022, they haven't lost a home game outside of losing to Georgia. So, yeah, no, I totally agree with you in that capacity that Oklahoma's offense and John Mateer is going to have to be the answer to this. Like I said, the run game has seen some success against run defenses that's not very good, and Tennessee's is one of the worst in the conference right now. This defense it's not last year's defense. This is not the defense in comparison,
No, it's not.
and the injuries have shown it. So, with that being said, if Oklahoma's defense does what they've been doing most of the year, which I think Tennessee can be susceptible to, they should be able to keep them under 30 points in this game. It's going to be hard. They're going to keep them under 30. Granted, Tennessee has yet to not give up 30 points to an SEC team, including Kentucky as well as Arkansas. So if that's the case, we should be able to score more than 30. If we can hold them under 30, we can hit about 30, especially with the run game, and we keep the time of possession. There's a possibility that Oklahoma could sneak in there and get that win. It's going to be tough because it is Neyland, but I actually today I have Tennessee winning this game by maybe a field goal. It's going to be a close one in the end, but I'm waiting to see if John Mateer gets his head straight, and if he gets his head straight in this game, Oklahoma should be able to win this game by scoring more than 30.
I got to tell you, I don't think I've ever heard you pick against Oklahoma in a game like this. But hey, that's Jay Smith just being incredibly fair. You could say fair, unbiased, neutral, and all those sorts of things. That's the sort of discussion we're going to get into with the coaching carousel. Florida, Penn State, where do those programs go? First, this episode brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. When I look for a car, I'm looking for safety and reliability. Those are the two most important factors, and Mazda is giving you just that. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. And some of those seasons that you want to have confidence with are already here, and they're going to continue for the next several months. That's how this weather cycle thing tends to work. And so if you want a car that can get you anywhere, Mazda is giving you just that. Like the players of your favorite team, they sweat every detail at Mazda, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. The coaching carousel as wild as it has ever been. And I have Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions and Brandon Olsen of Locked On Gators, because those are two of the biggest openings in the country. Seyko, I want to start with you. Where's your head at right now? Where are Penn State fans at with regards to not having James Franklin as the head coach? Season that had national championship aspirations is over, done, looking forward. What is it like in Happy Valley?
I mean, it seems like old news to this point, right? Most of the fan base is pretty optimistic that Penn State can be a national title contender. And I believe so too. I believe that this is a top 10 job. Florida's up there as well. Conservatively speaking, you have two hosts that covered two top 15 programs in the country, objectively speaking, at a minimum. So both schools believe that they're better than what Billy Napier was bringing. They're better than what James Franklin was bringing. It was the concept, but it's 10-2. You're going 10-2. It was being 0-16 against all top teams since 2017. That was what got James Franklin fired. And then the negative momentum of how one loss turned into two, because it's one thing to lose to Oregon. It's another to lose to UCLA and then Northwestern. So that is where things stand. But no, Penn State fans, for the most part, there are cautiously optimistic ones that say, Franklin was good. And most of them say, we can be better. And I agree.
Brandon, what about down in Gainesville? Is this, oh boy, here we go again. It's the Dan Mullen situation once more, where we're looking for a new head coach, and what are we going to do? And now we're scarred even more because of the last 4 seasons of Florida football. What's the overall mood in Gainesville?
I think pretty good right now. I think everybody, regardless of what actually happens, I think most of Gator Nation right now is riding the lane train. And so whether or not that happens right now, we feel pretty good about it. I personally feel pretty good about that happening. And so I think right now we're riding the lane train. We know that we're not getting resolution. And so there's going to be a lot of unrest there. But for, I think, most fans, we go, hey, probably going to be Lane Kiffin, or most fans hope it's going to be Lane Kiffin. But I do think that the stark difference from when Florida hired Billy Napier after firing Dan Mullen, which, by the way, was a good decision. Not hiring Billy, sure, but firing Dan Mullen was a good decision. We're not doing the revisionist thing. He quit on the program. He deserved to be fired. He also had 70-something ranked recruiting class and was like 9-6 in his last 15 games at Florida. It's not like he was still winning a bunch of games. But so I think that there's that, but now the cupboard's not empty. When Billy Napier came in, he's like, hey, this is going to be a multi-year rebuild. Like, we got a lot of work to do here. You don't have that. If you have a coach and bring in a coach that can retain most of this roster, and for once in what feels like my life, a somewhat favorable schedule for next year, comparatively at least to the SEC, what we've been dealing with, then yeah, I think that you can look at the right coach with roster retention, could come in and compete for a college football playoff spot right away.
Let me throw a couple of things at you here, Brandon, and Seyko.
Say the wrong thing, I'm going to throw something at you.
Yeah, well, we're in two different countries.
Florida.
Right, yeah, there it is. That's what I was going to say.
I get back next week.
Let's say I understand Lane Kiffin being the top target for Florida fans, and I talked earlier this week on my show about how I can see him going to LSU or Florida because those are better jobs. I don't think he has to. I don't think he's in such a bad spot in Ole Miss now and going forward to where if he wants to accomplish his goals, win an SEC championship, compete for a national championship, I don't think that he's incapable of doing that at Ole Miss. I think it's easier at the other programs if he carries over what he's done in Oxford to either Gainesville or Baton Rouge. But let's say that doesn't happen. Let's say Lane Kiffin sticks it out with the Rebels, wants to continue to build on what he's already built there with that program. Would you ever, in a million years, Brandon, consider hiring James Franklin to be Florida's head coach?
I have considered it. I'm strongly against it.
How come?
I don't think he's a national championship caliber coach. Like Zach has mentioned, you've had resources at Penn State. I understand there's going to be people that go, oh, okay, well, recruiting in Florida, you have an easier Florida pipeline. James Franklin did a pretty good job of getting Florida talent every so often in Pennsylvania at Penn State. I don't think he is a championship caliber coach because he's come so close so many times. He's had all those 10-2, 10-2, 10-2, like Zach mentioned. I think that with James Franklin, and there are some coaches who won't have the best record against top 10 teams or top 25 teams. And that's fine. But I do think that with James Franklin, a lot of his failures were his own fault. I think with Lane, you can look at some of the resources available at Ole Miss and say, hey, he doesn't have the resources to build a fully deep and talented roster. I think James Franklin had those resources. I think James Franklin just screwed up and wasn't good enough. And if you weren't good enough to win a national championship at Penn State, I don't want to make the assumption that you're going to be good enough to win a national championship in Gainesville. And that's what I'm looking for. Like administration can feel different. Fans can feel different. When I'm talking about who I personally want, it's a guy that I think can come in and compete for a national championship. And I don't think James Franklin can do that. So yeah. I'm out on James.
I'm with you on that front. However, Seyko, I want you to weigh in on this, and we'll get to Penn State candidates and whatnot. I don't think James Franklin is done being a head coach. Like James Franklin to Virginia Tech, James Franklin to Wisconsin, I think those are very real. I don't know about Florida State. Because what I see with Franklin is what you talked about, Brandon. I don't think he's a national championship kind of coach. But right now, what Virginia Tech and Wisconsin are looking for is to reestablish their brand, get credibility back. Like they need a stabilizer. Before Tim Skipper got things rolling this season at UCLA, I think he'll end up being the full-time head coach there in Los Angeles for the Bruins. If that hadn't happened, I would have considered James Franklin for that job more heavily. But I suspect Seyko, based on what he said on College Game Day and how it all unfolded at Penn State and what I still think he can be, I think he winds up being a head coach somewhere next year. I don't think it's at a tier 1 school for football. I think it's at a tier 2, like a Wisconsin or Virginia Tech. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think you'd be spot on for that, but you also have to factor in Franklin's ego. Okay? This isn't a criticism. This is just how he thinks, how he operates. He believes that he is still the kind of coach that can be at LSU, can be at Florida, and should be the preferred candidate in the same conversation with a Lane Kiffin or a rising star like maybe a Joe Brady. Out of the NFL. Just he's at the top of Penn State's, odds makers say for Penn State and LSU, right? That Joe Brady's a strong consideration. That's where Franklin believes he should be. Virginia Tech is considered a step back for him. A Florida State would be considered a step backwards for him. UCLA, I think the jobs that would be perfect for him if he's able to swallow his pride is UCLA or Virginia Tech. But I don't know that he wants that because he says he can win a national title. Well, you're not winning national titles at UCLA or Virginia Tech. Okay? So Franklin believes that he still belongs in the Big Ten at the top of the Big Ten. Okay? Wisconsin and UCLA are not going to be at the top of the Big Ten anytime soon. Virginia Tech, I think, would be perfect for him because he needs to realize that his credibility has diminished. Okay? It's not the same. He's still a good coach. Like you said, he'll stabilize a program. Virginia Tech would be perfect because he can still recruit very well. That is the prime spot to go in where DC, Maryland, Virginia, outside of Pennsylvania, that was his bread and butter. He lands at Virginia Tech. That's going to be an issue for Penn State's next head coach. I'm just saying it's not the end all be all. It's not going to be fun in recruiting going up against James Franklin with his Pennsylvania connections. So with that being said, he doesn't want to be in the ACC unless he has to be.
When we get back, we're going to continue down the list. We've heard Lane Kiffin. We know that is Florida's dream boy over there in Gainesville. But if that's not an option, each of these guys are going to give their top targets at Penn State and at Florida. That coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move. Whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors, this is Training Reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. You'll love how Peloton IQ offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. Like having the strength coach of your favorite team for yourself, but in digital form. That's what Peloton's bringing to the table. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. It's ONEPELOTON.com. Check that out at onepeloton.com. All right, keeping it rolling. Brandon, I want to start with you. Let's say Lane Kiffin is off the table. Who do you want Florida to hire?
If I were making the hire or
Yes.
genuinely?
Let's make sure we distinguish those two things because there's who you guys want and who you think the administration is going to go out and get. So separate those two thoughts, but where do you think it goes after Lane Kiffin?
Lincoln Riley or Eli Drinkwitz would be
Oh!
I would bank on right now.
From that's who you want, or that's who you think the administration will want?
That's who I think the administration would be more likely to pursue after if Lane doesn't work out. James Franklin would probably be on the list up there. I think one area where the administration and I agree is over in Atlanta with Brent Key from Georgia Tech. I like what he's done so far. I would only be skeptical because I don't think Buster Faulkner would come with him to Gainesville.
The offensive coordinator.
Yes, sorry. Buster Faulkner, offensive coordinator, Georgia Tech, might get that head coaching job if Brent Key leaves. Got great Georgia ties. Also, who knows what happens with Mike Bobo at Georgia? I would imagine Buster Faulkner would be near or at the very top of that list to fill that vacancy if that happens there. So I don't think Buster Faulkner would end up in Gainesville as well, as much as I love his offense, which then leads me to say, okay, well, Brent Key, you need to now hire another coordinator. And if you screw that, that's the thing that gets a lot of coaches, specifically defensive coaches, is you hire an OC. If that gets screwed up, you basically flush 2 years down the drain. And then you got to hire another one, and it's a lot harder to recruit at that point when you've had some failures there. But I think Brent Key is someone that I'd look at. I don't hate Eli Drinkwitz as a candidate. I hate Eli Drinkwitz. I'll say that. I've met him
What
before.
did Eli Drinkwitz do to you? He's made Missouri relevant.
I have met him and he was a D-bag. So he has
okay.
has genuinely, to me, that's what Eli Drinkwitz did. And so I don't like Eli Drinkwitz. However, I've said if you do come to Gainesville, I think you'll be able to win some football games, and I will brush that to the side if you win games for my program. That's fine with me. Lincoln Riley, I'm out. I'm good. Thanks. Appreciate it, but no thank you.
Okay, one quick thing, Seyko, and then we'll get to you. Brandon, you mentioned those guys, and they're all current head coaches.
Yep.
Is there any chance you think Florida goes for a coordinator that hasn't been a head coach, a la Kirby Smart at Georgia once upon a time, Dan Lanning at Oregon right now? You can just keep going down the list. Do you think there's any chance that they go in that direction, or is it someone who's been a head coach before?
I think there is an incredibly slim chance. I think they're looking for a CEO type of head coach that's going to come in, not be a play caller. You got a good roster. Just bring in a guy that can manage the load, and I think that's what matters when we're talking about coordinator hires. I think that's riskier. I think you have a good roster where you don't need to take a risk like that.
Seyko, is that where Penn State's collective heads are at?
I could name a bunch of names and they all kind of have different avenues, right? They are looking for that upside, because why do you fire James Franklin if you're just going to go with Matt Rule, Manny Diaz, right? You're going to pay all that buyout money just to either be the same or maybe you're slightly better. You need somebody with upside. You need somebody with potential. So that's why they could go the coordinator route. This is, again, based on when we're recording this, so much changes in a matter of minutes, hours, days. Brian Hartline's the guy right now that is trending, that is rising, like racing up the head coaching hot board for Penn State right now. First year as an offensive coordinator, full-time play caller, right? But he doesn't have any experience. Oregon has shown it can work. Georgia has shown it can work. Okay. Hey, even Ohio State did it with Ryan Day. Ryan Day was the full-time OC for Ohio State. At one season, they promoted him, and they are one of the schools that is the epitome of success in college football. Penn State, I know they went to the well with Jim Knowles. You would be able to maybe keep Jim Knowles and actually put him in a better position to succeed if you go and get somebody that he's worked with previously. You don't need Brian Hartline to fix all the issues. You need him to bring something from the outside that makes Penn State better as a program, and you can supplement the rest. You don't need Brian Hartline to be this established. And if it doesn't work, so be it. Okay, that's a risk that I'm willing to take. Roll the dice here, because the upside and the potential is there. If they don't go and say, you know what, at the end of the day, it is a little risky. We want somebody that's established. Kalen DeBoer and Mike Elko are the preferred candidates, but obviously those become more of long shot choices day by day.
Yeah.
I'm not saying those are likely. There was interest, and then, well, they kept winning. So Texas A&M and Alabama are probably going to make sure that they stay in their respective spots. Matt Rule is still a realistic candidate because of his connections to Penn State. Same thing with Manny Diaz. Joe Brady, who I've mentioned already, offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. Those are the names to know. Bob Chesney over at James Madison is starting to gain some steam here a little bit. But I don't know what does Bob Chesney give you in terms of upside that someone like Brian Hartline doesn't. That's why it seems like Penn State needs to go the coordinator high upside route, because the head coaching experience, be darned, it works if you make the right hire and give them the right resources, which Penn State can do.
Yeah, I think that conversation overall is an interesting one, because I can just as easily give you perceived negatives or positives in both directions. I don't think there's a wrong way, whether it's the Florida job, the Penn State job. I don't think hiring a coordinator, if you feel like he's the right guy, is a bad move because, well, he hasn't been a head coach before. Well, neither had anybody before they became a head coach. I don't think Elko had been a head coach before he got the job at Duke. Had he? Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Marcus Freeman, same thing. And that's going really well, even though it started out pretty poorly. That's kind of, I think, the risk that maybe comes into play more so of hiring a coordinator is Marcus Freeman early in his he started 0-3 as Notre Dame's head coach. Lost the Fiesta Bowl to Oklahoma State, lost the season opener to, I believe it was Ohio State, and then lost to Marshall the following week. He's lost to Northern Illinois. He's lost to a bad Stanford team. You look at him now, and he had his team in a one-possession game in the fourth quarter of the national championship last year. I want to throw a name at you guys, and I want your thoughts for each of your respective programs here that I brought up earlier this week on my show, and I don't think is generating a lot of buzz because of how this season has gone. If this cycle had happened 1 year ago, Tell me why Fran Brown's name wouldn't be at the top of people's minds way more than it is right now. I don't see him on basically any list anywhere. Maybe he's content at Syracuse. I think it's reflective of the fact that the Orange are 3-5. Their starting quarterback got injured earlier this season. Steve Angeli was playing really good ball. Fran Brown ties to the SEC. Brandon, also currently coaching in the northeastern part of the country, Seyko. I think Fran Brown's a really good head coach, under the radar kind of guy, up and comer in the industry. Brandon, I'll start with you. Is Fran Brown a target that gets overlooked in your view?
Overlooked, yes. He was someone that, if we were talking earlier in the season, he would have been on my list. I don't think Florida is going to look for someone that has the record that Syracuse has right now, regardless of why that's the record. I think right now the boosters and the administration, they're looking for someone that has proven wins right now. Honestly, when you were talking about someone who, if we're having this conversation last year, then the name would have been brought up. I thought you were going to go with Jeff Traylor at UTSA. I feel like he overperformed for most of his time. And then this year,
struggle again.
Season. Yeah. But Fran Brown is a name that would have been on my list if the season didn't go the way that it did, but I just don't view him as a realistic option. I think he's a hell of a coach, really do. But yeah, I just don't think he's a legitimate option for Florida.
Is it because there might be the initial kind of negative response, and those things can cycle amongst fans, donors, and the like with, why are we bringing in a coach that's 3-5 right now? Like, do you think that would be the pushback to him? Because you do have to understand the full context of why he's a potentially high-level head coach in college football. I think he's done a lot of things right up there at Syracuse. But is that the reason why it maybe wouldn't be received well?
It's one of them. The other is not enough experience as a head coach. And another is that all the names I've listed were offensive-minded head coaches. And that seems to be the route that Florida's going. I also personally think that that's the better route to go. And so I think I think there's multiple reasons. I do think that if Syracuse was performing better this season, and obviously healthier with that, then he would be a more legitimate name. But I just think that there's too many things working against him right now.
Seyko, would you consider Fran Brown for Penn State's head coaching job?
Absolutely, but not as that tier one, the first group of candidates that I named. And then if it came down to Fran Brown or Matt Rule, let's just say they were the only two in that next step, I'd go with Fran Brown because, again, I'm looking for upside. I'm looking for potential. Fran Brown has shown that he can recruit very well. You could compare him to James Franklin in some sort of sense. I don't know how Fran Brown is as an X's and O's coach. I do know that he has a very positive outlook when it comes to being a CEO, being a program stabilizer and builder, and being a recruiter. And then, again, you can succeed. You just have to supplement those other parts. So I think it would work with Fran Brown in Penn State. I think it would work with Fran Brown in Florida. You just have to make sure all of those shortcomings, all of the weaknesses are taken care of. So I totally agree with Brandon when he says, hey, this is just what we're looking for. Okay, we had Billy Napier. He offered a lot of that, upside, so to speak, when he was being vetted as a candidate. And hindsight's 20/20 at the end of the day. You don't know until the hire or the fire actually happens. Okay, Penn State might totally fall flat on its face and be 6-6 and move down lower in the ranks of the Big Ten. That's a risk that the administration said we are willing to take because we know at the end of the day, we're going to bounce back at some point. Is that in 2 to 3 years? Ideally, yes. Is it 4, 5, 6 years later? They're okay with that as long as they still get to that spot. Okay. James Franklin had maximized his success. Everything was maxed out. He had the resources and the results spoke for themselves. You knew it wasn't going to get better than this. He was never going to break the glass ceiling. Try with somebody else. And I think Fran Brown could do that, but compared to everybody else that we've named, he's just not. In a few years, somebody is going to get a really good head coach. He's going to be in the Big Ten or the SEC soon enough. It's just not going to be this year.
Yeah, I think he's SEC bound eventually. Just the tie's already there. I think a team's going to throw the bank at him eventually.
Yeah, Well, every job in the SEC is coming open, so there will be plenty of chances, certainly, for him to get that. Any closing thoughts for you guys as you continue to just kind of sit around in college football purgatory?
Purgatory? I'm on the lane train. What do you mean?
Yeah,
I'll say this in front of both of you guys right now. Florida's going to beat Ole Miss is my call. I'm calling that they're going to do it again.
You think they're going to do it again?
I think last year it was everybody wanted Billy fired to hire Lane Kiffin, and so it was destiny for Billy to beat Lane. And I think this year you're getting a bunch of people that are going, okay, well, Ole Miss is going to make the college football playoff, and then Florida's going to miss out on Lane because of that. And I think the story this year is going to be Florida can help knock Ole Miss out of the playoffs, and that will make Lane available earlier. That's my whole, I think, yes, Ole Miss might be the better team, but sometimes in college football, the story matters more than the game.
Lane Kiffin be a pretty strong selling point for DJ Lagway, Dallas Wilson, anybody else that wants to stick around. Seyko, any final thoughts?
You say college football purgatory. This has been one of the most entertaining seasons that I can remember for Penn State. And I know they just made the college football semifinal, but it was Boise State. It was SMU. It was the same story over and over and over and over. And since 2019, I can't remember the last time that Penn State football was actually exciting. It was here we go again. Oh, hey, look, we won. Great. We lost to another team that was slightly better than Penn State. I was tired of the same ending. This is something different. I'm willing to take multiple steps backwards to spring forward.
Zach Seyko, Locked On Nittany Lions. Brandon Olsen, Locked On Locked On Gators. Great stuff today. Look at that. Yeah, fixed it in real time. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.